It's okay to take a break. It's okay to take a time out. That doesn't mean that you have failed at your job or as a person. Sometimes we just need a break. Go seek those resources. If you have to, find a facility where you go stay for a week or two to regroup, that's okay. You have your whole life to live.
You're listening to On the Road, a law enforcement journey. Hear from those currently on the force while getting an insider view from what it takes to become a law enforcement officer.
All right, welcome to On the Road, a law enforcement journey. This is episode number 5. Today we have our next guest. She's approaching 24 years of active service in law enforcement for the Chicago Police Department. She has a very impressive background and continues to go above and beyond to serve other people. I cannot do her background justice. Our guest is Julie Joyce. Julie, welcome. Can you please tell us a little bit about your background?
Hi, thank you for having me. I entered law enforcement in 1998. The irony in it is that I never wanted to be a police officer. One of my friends in college, her whole family was in the Chicago Police Department, and she wanted to go take the test, but she was too afraid to go alone. So she begged me to go with her. I agreed to go with her. This is pre-cell phone years. So when I showed up to the test, the testing site was at a stadium, and it wasn't like I could pick up the phone and call her to see if she was there. So I just walked in and took the test. I had no intention on becoming a police officer. And then later, when I spoke with her later on the phone, I found out she never even showed up. So it was kind of funny. They actually then send you a letter like, we have accepted you, thank you for your interest. Here is your next step. And I looked at my dad and I said, what do I do now? And he said, try it. You might like it. So that's how I ended up becoming a Chicago police officer. It was kind of an accident.
That is a heck of a way to end up in this career path.
Yes. So in 24 years, I have been on patrol. I have been in a tactical unit. I have done a lot of undercover work. I have also been on foot patrol in the downtown Chicagoland area. We do a lot of public safety, and currently I am assigned to the counterterrorism unit.
And all those stops that you've had, were those tough things that you kind of sought out to be able to do, or were you just given that task, like assignment?
It's different in the Chicago Police Department. You have to seek them out. There will be people who will ask you if you're a good worker, which is how I ended up on the tactical unit. I was a young officer. I was aggressive. I love the diversity of the job. I love the teamwork of the job, the camaraderie. I was really driven toward that team and unity. So I thrived in those positions. And that's how I sought out, different units. Obviously, the Chicago Police Department is a very big department, and we have a lot of different units. So I'm not sure if I could go and get into all of them in a full career because we have so many. But I've been very blessed to be in the right places at the right time and be asked to join a lot of these various units.
And that's awesome, especially to have that good work ethic to help get in those positions. I mean, is there one particular area that you've enjoyed more than others, or has it all been a great experience for you?
It's truly all been a great experience. I will say that being on foot patrol was probably more of my fondest memories, mostly because we get to see things and do things that the average citizen never will. Like when the Cubs won the World Series, we were there. We were standing with the players. We were behind the stage. We got to take pictures with them. We got to see the trophy. When the Hawks won the Stanley Cup, there again, we got to stand with them, take pictures with them. Those are moments in time that you will never forget. You get to see a lot of concerts and meet a lot of famous people. So it definitely has its advantages. As far as the unity, I felt was great, because when you're working in an environment like that, oftentimes you're working more than just a regular 8-hour day. Sometimes you don't have any days off in the week. So you become a very close-knit family. We always joke that your partner is actually closer to you than your spouse, because you spend more time with them. So I've been very fortunate and very blessed that I have really worked with some of the best people, I think, in the nation.
Going on the camaraderie thing, do you still are there still people serving with you that were around like the same time when you first started?
My new team is younger than I. Most of them. I am the senior officer, which is so scary to think, because your career goes by so quickly. However, we have a lot of officers with different experience. We have some officers who have as little as 3 or 4 years with us, and we have officers who have 16, 17 years. So, it's kind of a mix, which I find it more interesting, because it's always the younger generation that inspires you to do more in your current roles, right? Because they still have that blood, that passion. They want to get out there and catch the bad guys. So I find that part very refreshing. It reminds you of why you got on this job.
That's interesting, and that's something I was going to ask you a little bit later too, and I'll still ask you that question once we get there. But that's great to hear that you got such a mixed bag of backgrounds and age groups there. I mean, like you said, to keep from complacency setting in and stuff like that. So
Sure. And being a veteran officer, I still can't believe I'm using these words. Um, it's nice to be able to teach younger officers, because you have the experience that they don't. So I definitely like that aspect of being able to teach them things, or to think outside the box, or just to guide them along, just to be a mentor sometimes. It's very rewarding and fulfilling.
yeah, that's awesome, Julie. Especially almost 24 years. I mean, there's no textbook or anything that's gonna teach people how to deal with those situations. I mean, that's an incredible amount of time invested in dealing with the community that those young officers will deal. Great. Get a lot of benefit from being able to learn from you from all that.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I think we all take this job because truly want to make a difference in the communities we serve. And I know law enforcement often gets a bad rap, but I truly think that our hearts are there for the right reason. The majority of us really want to be active in the community and help those victims and make the wrongs right again. At least that's the world that I've tried to live in. I've tried to maintain um, that kind of mantra in my head. Like, don't forget why you're here.
Yeah, that's well said. And going on that making a difference in the community, because some people, I mean, especially if they're not involved in law enforcement, and this is something I'm still learning. Um, what can that mean? Because if people think about that, it's I mean, making a difference in the community. They think about maybe like fundraiser type stuff, but it's more than that. I mean, do you have anything that you can maybe add on to that?
Well, sure. Early in my career, I did also a stint in community policing, and I was the youth officer, so I got to connect with a lot of children. Um, I had a young girls group called Girls on the Go, and I work with them very closely. And these were girls we have projects in Chicago, and I love these children like they were my own. It was so rewarding to see their faces when we would have different events, or we'd meet up, like we had weekly meetings, sometimes bi-weekly meetings, and we had different activities that we planned from. I was very vested. We also did peer jury. So that's for children who commit misdemeanor nonviolent crimes, and they have a jury of their peers who decide their punishment. And so I was the one who had to facilitate that. I was the facilitator of the peer jury. And it was great to see how these kids come together and they become vested in you. I mean, I could give you 100,000 examples of interactions with the community. It's not about fundraisers. It's really about making those lifelong connections. Well, when I was trying to start the peer jury program, I was blessed that we had a community activist at the time, our community liaison. She was very active with the police. And her and I, through that, developed a friendship. She had brought in children from the neighborhood to be on my peer jury. And 24 years later, well, probably 20 years later, it was about 4 or 5 years into my career, we have still remained friends. She is a woman who has fostered 27 children in her lifetime. She's in her 60s now, but she was a foster mom of 27 children. And my admiration for her is unbelievable, because I don't even know how she did it, and continues to do it. She adopted her last foster child, and he calls me auntie because we've become so close over the years. So, I mean, there's many facets, especially being in a big city, where you can make those connections in the communities that we serve. I don't think that's lacking. I think we get a bad rap on that. There are officers out there every day who are who are out there coaching and playing sports with these children. And I've never met an officer who ran into some type of terrible situation where the family was in dire straits of whatever it may be, maybe food for the children or toys or diapers, or that they didn't all come together and throw some money in and buy them whatever necessities they needed. So those are the kind of rewarding experiences that are not talked about a lot. And those are the things that we need to focus on more, because we really do a good job of connecting with the community. And the hard part is, when you leave these positions, or you leave your beat car or whatever other agencies call it, or you leave community policing, they miss you. And it's really tough. It's like breaking up with someone, you miss them, but life moves on.
Yeah, there's a piece of you that's invested into them, and I mean, they're invested into you as well. I can't imagine fostering that many kids. I mean, because it sounds bad saying it this way, but there's always the risk of things not going so smooth. So for somebody to dedicate that much of their time in their life to doing something like that, and you touched a little bit on too with the how people view law enforcement. Like, if there was more of that stuff, like what truly happens in the day a law enforcement officer, or how engaged in the community you guys really are, I think there would be so much more positive mindsets and views towards the law enforcement.
I totally agree. I think we take a snippet out of one person's or one officer's bad experience and we blow it up. We never focus on all the good things that we do on a daily basis. One of the things I got vested in early was our CIT program, which is crisis intervention training, where we train officers to deal with people in mental health crisis. And early on in my career, and we started a juvenile crisis intervention program, which had never been done before. The main crisis intervention program started in the 80s, I believe in Memphis, Tennessee. And so we kind of took that and molded it to fit juveniles, because mental health issues in adults and juveniles are different. And then we also created a veteran CIT program, which no one ever talks about, which is sad, because there are a lot of people who are very vested in it, and it's really changed the way our officers respond to mental health crisis. I think we are one of the top agencies, and we do a phenomenal job at it.
Yeah, that's awesome because I mean especially as a law enforcement officer, you're going to go into so many different situations. But I mean, all the different mental health aspects that people can be going on. I mean, it can really escalate something. Um, Maybe to a spot it doesn't need to. Can you talk a little bit like what that training was like for the officers?
The training is 40 hours. We teach a lot of things like de-escalation. We teach active listening. We teach about medication. We bring in a family panel so they can, meet with families. In the regular CIT, they actually go through scenario-based training. It's a
Wow.
very rewarding training. There's not one officer that I have helped train over the years that said, "Gosh, I hate this training." Every one of them said they wish that they had the training earlier in their career. It's kind of ironic because I think I think it gets a bad rap. People are afraid when you say the word mental illness or mental health, and as an officer, I think we often go, "Oh no, not that again." But when you have the tools to respond to the job goes a lot better. And what we found, I think we would have to verify it, but I think statistically speaking, is that the number for type of a, a violent interaction had actually gone down because you teach the officer, safety and distance and things of that nature.
Yeah, that's phenomenal, Julie. Going on to that, I think that maybe the training too, because it helps to. I don't want to say like I guess I don't want to make it that I'm seeing like training dehumanizes things, but when you know how to handle those situations, it keeps that human element, and then we go back on that the main topic of even like community engagement. You're able to be effective in handling those situations with your community.
Yeah, CIT training is something that you can take throughout your career in any job that you respond to because of the skills that it teaches you. It's not just necessarily for mental health, and as a matter of fact, most officers do it. They just don't even realize they're doing it. It's never been labeled for them. So when they get the training, it's like eye opening. Like, well, wait a minute, we've been doing that a long time. Active listening and de-escalation and mirroring, and we all do it. We just don't have a label.
Yeah, and see that's interesting. And again, maybe if people had an because I mean I didn't know that, but I mean if other people had like an understanding of because I mean we hear about the defunding thing about getting better training and all that stuff, but I don't think people realize what all training law enforcement does. So I mean it's pretty ridiculous to make statements like that when not even aware of what the officers, especially like what you said with the CIT and stuff, are actually being taught.
No, I think people who defund the police are looking at numbers on a screen, right? They don't actually know what the training entails. They don't know what all the officers go through. I mean, it's different when you live it. I feel like society in general should all take a ride along, right? Because then they would truly understand the type of stuff that we go through on a day-to-day basis, and they would understand the need for training. Here, let me give you a good example. I watch a lot of doctor shows, and I used to watch Grey's Anatomy for years. I don't think I will be setting foot in an emergency room to try to perform surgery or save someone's life, right?
Yeah.
Because I've never been trained to do that and don't have the educational background. So how do we expect officers to go out into a field without having the tools or the training that they need? It's common sense.
Yeah, and it would be so refreshing to have the public's eyes opened up to all this stuff. Like you said too, with the ride along, I enjoyed the ride alongs I did because I got to fully see what was going on, even just in my hometown, and to be able to ask all the questions, literally see how everything is done. How paperwork is done, or how the officers interacted with people that were either high on drugs or drunk or anything. It was a great experience to be able to see those interactions.
Yeah, and the other aspect of it is when you're talking about humanizing or dehumanizing, I think people forget that officers are people too. We're not superheroes. We don't fly around in capes. We have feelings and emotions, and the things that we respond to will affect us not only the rest of our career, but the rest of our life. I believe that, there are different things that we go to that you can't necessarily just shake off. It becomes a part of you, if that makes sense.
Yes, and I think what's harder for you guys in law enforcement too is when you go home, you have to be spouse and parent too. It's not like you can wear that stuff on what's happened and let it bag you down from being able to be a productive family member.
Sure, in an urban environment, think about this. How many jobs do we go on or respond or calls that we respond to during a typical 8-hour shift? I mean, you can go from someone who's been found deceased for whatever reason. It could be murdered, it could be suicide, it could be natural. Then you can go to a domestic, right, where people are fighting. From that, you can go to a fire where people are being displaced out of their homes. I mean, and then you have to come home and be that parent or take your child to ballet lesson or basketball camp, or make dinner. For me, I was a single parent. I was a young parent, and I had to come home and do all of it. There was no other parent to do it. I do the cooking, shopping, school events, sports, all of it. It was just me. And on top of that, which I have not mentioned, but I had a son who has extreme mental health issues. So I had to deal with that on top of working. And I think the hard part about that is, as police officers, as you go through your career, we kind of compartmentalize that. And what we need to do is change that conversation. We need to start talking about it. It's like a boiling pot of water, right? If you have a lid on, it only boils so much, and then the lid's going to come off.
Yes, that's very true. For your own experience, because that's a lot to put on your plate, especially as a single parent. How did you manage to do that?
Well, I think just being a parent in general, you don't think about it, you just do it. and and I was very fortunate in the fact that I have a very supportive family. I have very supportive friends. And being on the teams I did, our hours were changing endlessly. And there wasn't anyone who didn't play some type of role in my child's life. I had a lot of people babysit last minute for me because I had no choice. If I didn't work, I couldn't pay the bills. And I was also very fortunate that I also had great bosses who looked out for me and understood that when I needed to take the time off, that they would give me the time off. I always tell people it feels like, in my life personally, but that's because I was dealing with a child who had mental illness and special needs, that it feels like a whirlwind. Like one day you just wake up and you're like, wow, how did I get here? This is amazing. I can't believe I've made it this far. But we all do what we have to, right? Everyone has their own struggles. There's not anyone I've never met who doesn't have something going on behind the door. It's how you handle it that makes you a better person.
Yeah, Julie, that's well said. Just to go on this, and I mean, I'll drop a cuss word too. Try to keep this. I mean, not like blatantly, dropping f-bombs on the show and stuff like that. But I was talking with one of my friends the other day, and we were talking about how societies changed so much. Like he was talking about having a hard time discipline. He's a wrestling coach, disciplining kids. He actually got let go because he was being too hard on the kids, and he said, I just have my philosophy in life is just to do hard shit. Like you either do it or you don't. You're gonna quit. You quit on one thing, you're gonna quit on so many things. So I mean, you have literally done hard shit for 24 years in law enforcement, and then having to deal with all you did as a single parent and being dedicated to your son and stuff like that. That's phenomenal on your end.
Well, thank you. I think everyone's path is different, and I think it's perspective. Sometimes you have to take a step back, right? Like I try to tell people all the time, I didn't do this by myself. It takes a village to raise a child, especially a child with special needs. Number one. Number two, all the things that happen during the day at work, the tragic things that I've seen, I had to process it somewhere. So there's no shame in my game that I tell officers I went to therapy for many, many years because you have to let it out. It has to come out somewhere. I call it like vomiting. When you're feeling really sick and then you throw up and you feel better, that's kind of how it is with this stuff that happens on our job. Like you have to process it somewhere. So not to say that I'm a perfectly normal person. Obviously, we all get a little jaded from so much time, but I think overall, I've turned out okay. Um, and I sleep very well at night. So I'm one of the lucky ones.
Yeah, um, that's crazy, Julie. There was I lost my train of thought. There was a question I wanted to ask you on
I'm
what you just
sorry.
said. I hope it comes back. But one thing I wanted to touch on too, maybe this will help bring that thought back. Um, I read that you're certified by the FBI hostage negotiation team as a crisis negotiator.
Yeah, they offered a training. It's similar to crisis intervention training, and I was able to take that training. I have not utilized that training through the department just because our department protocols are different. We use detectives as negotiators, not police officers. Um, but yeah, that was a fantastic training, and I highly recommend if anybody has an opportunity to take it because it's super similar to crisis intervention. But it's about organizing the scene. Um, who does what roles different people take, information coming in, information going out. It's quite interesting.
That's crazy. It's just adding another tool in the box, and I mean, it sounds like you've got a lot of tools in the box. And what I was going to go on to what you just my train of thought now is it's got to at least help engaging the community or being relatable to others, having all this background and experience through your own life. I mean, it's got to make it a little bit easier to be able to relate to people.
Sure, but don't you think we all have different various backgrounds that can be relatable to other people? I don't think I'm an anomaly. I think everyone has something that's relatable. Like a lot of us are parents. We can all relate on that. A lot of us have parents. A lot of us have families. A lot of us were not raised privileged with a silver spoon in our mouth. Like I think there's a lot of relatable things that we can communicate with the communities that we work in.
Yeah,
I
and
think
that's
that's what I'm strong.
no, and that goes to what you said your prior statement too about the police officers being human and all that stuff. I just think it's a great tool when you come across those situations, whether you're dealing with somebody who is going through a hard time or whatever, to be able to like, look, I know how it is to go through hard things. Like you just gotta do what you gotta do. So that's great. That I mean, even just to show to have the humanality of police officers on the different situations you guys have gone through, to be able to make it through your careers and what you guys still continue to do. So I think that's huge to be able to let other people see that.
Yeah, I like to tell people when we're having conversations because they often bring up, that the police shoot people all the time. And the reality is the statistics show that's not true. But um, I always try to humanize police officers. I'm like, do you understand what it's like for an officer to take another person's life? Do you think it's easy? Do you think there's any officer that shows up to work who says, gosh, I can't wait to kill someone today? Because in my 24 years, I've never ran into that person. It's a very traumatic incident for anyone who's ever been involved in a shooting, whether they had to, um, you know, defeat the threat or whether the person walked away unscathed or they might have injured the person. It's still a very, very traumatic incident for the officer, and they take that with them for the rest of their life. It changes who they are.
Yeah, because some of those situations, and it's kind of like an armchair quarterback watching sports, or whatever. It's much easier to judge someone's actions when you haven't been in those shoes. But like, even I don't even think people realize how close like 10 yards is. Like, if somebody's within that distance, on how quick things can change, like that, you have to make a split-second decision, and it's going to impact everybody's lives.
Right. You're absolutely right. It's absolutely like a Monday night quarterback. Like, we don't have pause when we're on the scene of something. We can't pause the moment. We just have to keep going through it. And things are coming at you a mile a minute. So you're trying to process information, and your brain can only process so quickly. So, when you have people with guns, like, we're trained to focus on weapons, right? You're looking at their hands, you're looking at their waistband, you're looking for big bulges, you're looking for, that's how we think, because that's what we're trained to do. In the moment that somebody reaches for something, we have to be ready. We can't overthink it, or it may cost you your life.
Yeah, and I mean, it's crazy, and I don't want to go too much into like the quote unquote political side of things, but the media makes it seem like it's like a daily event that's going on with these police shootings, or that there could have been different routes and stuff like that. And it's always, I mean, we talked about a little bit of yesterday, but with like, once the body cam footage and stuff, or when the real story starts to come out, and it's just it's kind of sad that a picture gets painted against a police officer before all the facts come out.
Absolutely. But I also think that officers on the street need to remember that the majority of the people still support us, still respect us,
Yes.
and are very happy to see us show up every day.
Yes,
At least that's the way I like to do it. I'm sorry that the media doesn't focus on that, but I truly, really believe that they are thankful for us. And I think you have to take yourself out of the element. You become jaded after so long, especially officers dealing, in these bigger cities, in these high crime areas, that you're seeing the same thing every day. Sometimes you just need to take a step out of it and look at the bigger picture. Like, there are a lot of people out here who really like you. It isn't the minority that doesn't like you. The majority of people in communities support us and want us there. So don't get caught up in the propaganda.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest things that can make someone's day is just turn off the TV, don't watch the news. But I mean, like, law enforcement, you guys know what you do on a day-to-day basis, and talking about what all you do for the community and stuff, like, I mean, the community also knows what you guys do for them. So I mean, the media becomes kind of irrelevant at that point in some aspect.
Absolutely. You have to focus on the positive. Always focus on the positive. The negative will bring you down.
And so, and we're going to talk a little bit more about mental health here in a little bit. Like, what are the resources and stuff like for officers? So, say you got to go, like, say you're in that situation where you end up taking someone's life, or you end up hurting them. Do they have resources for the officers after something like that to be able to deal with those situations?
Sure. We do in our department. We have a employee assistance program that has dedicated clinicians who work with us. We also have a peer support program. I am a member of the peer support team. I've been on it for over 15 years. And those are obviously other officers who have special training who can come and assist you. Now, we are not clinicians, the peer support team, but we can talk to you and provide you resources. There are all kinds of resources that are out there now. All you have to do is Google them. And if things get really extreme, there are also facilities who are specializing and dedicating services to police officers. I always tell officers, being in whatever mental health crisis you are, whether you've taken a life or maybe it's just job stress in general, maybe it becomes too much. It's okay to take a break. It's okay to take a time out. That doesn't mean that you have failed. at your job or as a person. Sometimes we just need a break. Go seek those resources. If you have to, find a facility where you go stay for a week or two to regroup, that's okay. You have your whole life to live. It's just a little blip in the big scheme of things. Your career goes by so fast. And when you're at the end of it, you want to make sure that you're healthy and happy and you can live a very long extended life into retirement and collect those pension checks. That's the most important.
Yeah. Yes, I agree, especially after putting the lives of others before your own. I mean, when you finally get to retire, it's people should be able to enjoy that aspect where they can finally put themselves a little bit first.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking very forward to it. I'm hoping to retire in a little bit over a year. I'm hoping to live a long, successful life. I'm not sure what I'm going to do when I grow up. I always joke. Um, but we'll see where it takes me. There are a lot of statistics on health and stuff like that and life expectancy, and it's just not worth it. Like, you have all this time now, and I know we get very wrapped up in our jobs because we are so passionate. You take it very personal, but I think you still have to take care of yourself. A lot of times we're so busy taking care of other people, whether it's at home, whether it's at work, that we forget to take care of ourselves. And you really have to take that time out and put yourself first. And it's okay. The old saying, like, it's okay not to be okay. And
Yeah.
and it is, but you have to find a good balance, a good support system. I always say, surround yourself with positive people.
Yeah, and those are the same. I mean, those positive people are the ones that allow great things to have happen. I mean, and you get to actually enjoy those good things when they have happened. I mean, instead of being a Debbie Downer and weighing everybody else down.
Yeah, police officers have a tendency to do that as they go through their career. One of the things they taught us in the academy was not to let go of our civilian friends, right? The friends we grew up with, the friends we went to high school with, whatever they are, people you went to college with, people who are working 9-to-5 jobs Monday through Friday. Like, don't let go of those people. I think it's very important because if you surround yourself with only police friends, you tend to get caught up in that. Propaganda is not the right word, but you get caught up in the mix of things, of talking about police stuff 24/7, right? And this happened and that happened. And oh my God, I can't believe that this boss did this or that boss did that. And did you see what she's doing? And, who are they? Like, there's a whole world outside of that people lose sight of sometimes. So it's important to keep those outside connections, whether it's family or friends or volunteering or activities or whatever it may be for you. That's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about balance. Like, don't get caught up in the cynicism of it. That's a good word.
That is some great advice right there, and I think a lot of that would probably prevent a lot of burnout that happens among the law enforcement population.
Sure, absolutely. I think burnout happens when you get caught up in that all the time. Like I said, in this job, it can kind of be like Groundhog Day for some people, and it's easy to get caught up in the negative, especially if you're not getting what you want or you didn't get the promotion you want, or it can be very tough for people and heart-wrenching. And then you combine that with problems at home or problems in a marriage or problems with your children. I don't know, you sometimes have to stay grounded.
Yeah, it's when you're stuck in your own little bubble, your quote unquote comfort zone. I mean, that's things can kind of go downhill when you stay in your comfort zone and you never leave it. So having those outside differences with friends to do different things, I mean, that's phenomenal advice. And if anybody's listening, I hope they listen to that. I will make sure I keep that in my mind when I go through this process as well.
Yeah, it's super important, keep a balance in your life. Although I'm not, believe me, I have a ton of police friends that I love very dearly, and they're like family to me, and I wouldn't trade them for the world. I'm closer to them than some of the people I've known for 30 years, but and they keep me going some days when I need it the most. I've been very fortunate that I've worked with great people. They've become family. So, not to say to let any of that go, because you need that too, but you also need the outside. My husband is not a police officer, and he has been super supportive. And of anything I've done we've only been married for a little over a year, but we've been together for almost 5 years, and he's been super supportive in any decisions that I've made on this job. He's been patient with all the overtime that I've worked and days off canceled, and he's loved me through all of it. So I'm truly, truly blessed to have him in my life.
Yeah, I mean that support system. My brother, I got a twin brother who's a cop too, and he talked about that, his spouse and stuff like that. I mean, it's amazing how much that little support system can help keep a career going. Essentially,
It definitely makes a difference, but you also have to remember to share things with your spouse. I think it's different for men and women. I think a lot of men feel like they don't want to share a lot of things with their wives because they want to protect them, right? Men are protectors. And I think women are more prone to talk. We talk too much all the time. But I think men need to share that, even the bad stuff. Like, you can't protect them because communication is key in a good marriage. And if I have a bad day, I want my husband to know all about it. Like, he's my safety net. He's my comfort zone. And that's what keeps me healthy. And I think it keeps our marriage healthy, that I don't hold that stuff back and hold it inside and let it build up.
yeah, like you used the analogy of keeping the lid on and letting it boil up. I mean, it's not a whole lot of good is going to come from doing something like that.
No. Mm-mm. No.
So I'm going to segue into this, especially because we've been hitting on so much of this mental health or stress management stuff like that. I'm going to let you plug you run a podcast show as well. It's called Behind Our Door. And do you want to tell people a little bit about it? Because I think it's a great resource for people that are listening to this show to come check out that show.
Oh, thank you. Sure. Yeah. During COVID, I was talking to a friend of mine, and she used to be a program director for NAMI, which is the National Alliance for Mental Illness. And outside of my career, I've been a big mental health advocate, which is probably why I tend to always bring a conversation back to that. It's just what I know. It's second nature. Her and I had several conversations over COVID, and we talked about mental health and raising awareness and breaking stigma and reaching out to families to try to give them resources. And I brought up the idea of a podcast, and it's kind of funny. I was like, here we are, two old ladies. I don't have any idea how to start a podcast, but I thought it would be a great idea. And so we dropped our first podcast in the end of October, and now we are in January, and it's doing really well. I think it's being very well received. It's a mental health resource podcast. So you'll hear some stories about us, about our families, and we also bring in a lot of experts and go over different illnesses or stuff about special education or hormone imbalance. We have a plethora of guests that we're going to go through as the podcast goes on, but just so families realize, and caregivers, they're not alone. There are a lot of other people out there, and there are resources. So I hope people go and check it out.
Yeah, that's awesome. Because there's not a whole lot about that. I mean, one great thing about the podcasting now is it literally allows, I mean, for people who don't want to watch or anything, that the ability to listen, and especially when you're bringing on those guests who have the resources, or even from your guys' own experience that you can offer. Now, does it help you like to be able to talk with other people, or the people who specialize in mental health at all? Does it like help you on your end?
Uh, of course, yes. I think part of helping others is very therapeutic. I think that's why I've always gone that path, why I got so vested into crisis intervention training, why I do peer support. I've been a moderator in support groups for other parents with mental health issues. I've been an active volunteer for NAMI for many, many years. I speak very openly about my life and the life of my son. People are welcome to Google it. And the one thing that it's really helped, it's opened the door for me to help a lot of police officers who are having their own personal struggles because they understand that I get it. So I love that. It's very rewarding in that fact. And it's really made me a more humble person. So I've been very fortunate that I found this path, whatever it is, and I'm just going to continue down it.
Sure, absolutely. Oh, so, like, is there any like key, I guess, key things that people can do? Like, say if they're going to like a hard time, like any like from either your own experience or from people that you've talked to, like just basic steps or basic things that they can do to kind of manage their own mental stress or mental health at all.
Yeah. One of the things that I like to put out there is first rule out the biological, right? There are a lot of things that contribute to mood. Many of them can be something as simple as a vitamin deficiency. And I'm not a clinician by far, so you're just getting a perspective from a mom who's my son is going to be 29, so I have 29 years of experience. But vitamin deficiency, thyroid, allergies, Lyme disease, those are things that can truly affect your thinking, your function. So go and get all that checked out. Get your blood levels drawn and see where they're at. The next step is get support in place, whatever that is. Support groups, going to a place like NAMI, calling an 800 number internally at your work. If they have an EAP program, employee assistance or peer support, talk to friends and family. Don't be afraid to talk about it. That's one of the biggest things. When you bottle it up, it has to go somewhere. So find someone, anyone that you trust, and talk about it. Get it out. The next step obviously is to find a clinician, a therapist, a social worker, and get some professional help, because even like this job, we need tools. I'm never going to be a perfect parent. I'm never going to be a perfect police officer. But the more tools I have, the better advantages I will have toward the future. So I think that's a really, really good start for people.
Yeah, those are definitely great steps and something achievable to be able to do, especially because, I mean, especially when there's simple steps that you can do to be able to make sure you're being your best you. I mean, you want to make sure you're happy, and when you're home, when you got kids and your spouse, that they're happy around you too. You don't want to be a negative cloud because you're not taking those steps. And I think a lot of people, because I'm going to relate it back to when I was in the Army, it was just put it in a box and hide it, suck it up, like that, just that stigma that was associated with you can't be going through anything hard, like you're not allowed to, you just got to suck it up and move on. But like you were saying, it's okay to get help and talk.
Yeah, I think that was the old adage when I got on too, like, suck it up, kid, keep it moving. So what? This is the job, this is what you do. But it's not like that anymore. The climate is changing. Stigma is changing. I mean, look at all the shows that we watch on Netflix. We're talking about mental health more and more and more. All these celebrities coming out. I mean, 1 in 4 people suffers from a mental health issue. And police officers have one of the highest suicide rates in the nation. And that's a reality and very scary. So don't become one of them. And that's one of the biggest questions I get asked when we have a suicide on the department as a peer support member. Why do we have suicides, or why did that person die by suicide? And my answer is always the same. It's not because that person was going through a divorce or going through a financial difficulties. There's probably some underlying issue there that they have not addressed. And who knows what that might be. Again, I'm not a clinician, and I, didn't have interaction with this person, and I can't diagnose people. But I think we need to look at the bigger picture. Like, let's not let it get to that point. If you're having problems in your marriage and you're struggling to come home every day, find someone to talk to and find out how to better handle that situation, so it doesn't get so overwhelming that you feel so hopeless that you can't do this another day. The biggest adage is in suicide, and I'm just saying this because my own child has attempted suicide about 4 times in his life. Wow. And thankfully not successful. But you get the feeling of everyone will be better off without me. And as you know, if you've ever lost someone to suicide, if they could look back and see all the people that are hurting from what happened, they probably wouldn't have done it. And I truly understand that the pain people go through from watching my own son suffer for so many years. It's very hard to see the forest through the trees. But if you can just grab that one lifeline, whatever it takes, take it. Take it. Because you're worth it. People have to remember that even in the darkest times, they're worth something.
Yeah, and it's again, there's the going on too with the stigma towards suicide, because you can always hear it's like a cowardly act and stuff like that. But like, it's sad that somebody gets to that point, and that is their reality. That's the only solution when you get, like, when you've gotten so beat up mentally or whatever, that's the only option. I mean, that's your reality right there. And again, it's easy for people to sit back and go, oh, well, that was a cowardly act to do, but you don't understand what all they were going through and stuff like that. So it gotta be open, have an open mind, and be considerate of those things.
Yeah, I don't view it as a cowardly act at all. I view it, in their mind, I don't think they feel like they're being selfish. I feel like they feel they're being selfless. Does that make any sense?
Yes.
That in the fact that their actions or behavior or whatever they're doing is causing so much destruction in other people's lives that they don't want to be a burden. I've heard that a lot from a lot of people who suffer from mental health. Like, I'm tired of being a burden. No, everyone's mad at me. Everybody is judging me all the time. I can never achieve what I'm trying to achieve, and I'm just a loser. And that's not true. That's your brain tricking you. I always say your brain is a liar. Your brain is a liar, and you just need to find the right therapy or medication or whatever it takes to get your brain back on board. If we had people suffering from heart disease or some type of seizure disorder, we would run out and get treatment, wouldn't we? So why is it different when we're having mental health issues? Why aren't we running out and getting treatment? Logically, we should be doing that. There's nothing wrong with getting treatment, whatever that is for you.
Yeah, and I think that's more important so too, because when you're dealing with the brain, I mean, it's affecting all aspects of your life. I mean, literally. I mean, and it's reprogramming you. So, I mean, it's definitely a priority that. I mean, if there's even anybody listening right now too, that if you're going through something, make sure you're taking care of it, so it doesn't lead you down that path to where you're rewiring your brain and you're gonna have to go through the process of, troubleshooting to get back to where it was.
Yeah, the earlier you treat it, the better it will be in the long run. So seek it out before it gets to be that bad. There's no shame in my game. I went to therapy for many, many years to learn how to deal with my son. It was very overwhelming and very scary. And there were many times I thought, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. I need help. And I found support groups online. I found good therapists. I went on medication for a little while to get my serotonin levels back up. And I started working out and doing yoga, and all those things can have such an impact on your mind. The brain is a very complicated organ. That I can tell you. And in 29 years, I still haven't figured it all out. I probably never will.
Yeah. Yeah, and you hit on quite a few things, especially being active and stuff like that. Is is there any other like immediate things that you found relief stuff, like if you when you were feeling stressed out, like, oh my god, I can't do that? Was there anything like immediately you could do that would help kind of take some of that weight off the shoulders?
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I was never a yoga person. I'm not a yogi, but I started going to yoga because I had tight muscles all the time in my neck and my shoulders, and I contributed it to wearing a vest all the time. But the reality was, it was from stress. That's where I carried my stress. So I did all kinds of things like when my neck would tighten, they put me on muscle relaxers and painkillers and what else? Traction I went through for a while, and therapy, all kinds of physical therapy. And then I started going to yoga, and that really worked. And I'm not trying to like promote yoga across the board, but the one thing I learned in yoga, and it probably was because I had such a good teacher. She was an older lady, and she taught us how to breathe. Breathing is key because breathing slows down your nervous system a lot. And if you learn how to breathe correctly, then you can slow down your brain and slow down your nervous system, and the stress can slowly dissipate. So I highly advise people to, if they do one thing, just breathe. And I don't mean breathe like, panic breathe. I mean like take in those deep breaths, because there really is something to it. And so I find myself when I'm in stressful situations, unconsciously doing yoga breathing, which I think I just realized it like a couple of years ago. I was like, I didn't even know I did this. But, it's like the training thing. Like when you learn something, you just go back to those tools. That's what I was doing. So it's funny that happens. But I mean, it's helped me tremendously.
That does, and I got to hit on this too, Julie, because with my so many years now with the strength and conditioning experience, that is the one thing that's really been changing a lot in these past couple of years is teaching athletes how to breathe. And before I left hockey this year, we actually watched it in live time. We had heart rate monitors on our guys. And when they came off the shift on the bench, you could see some of their heart rate so high. And it's just like some of them were chest breathing and stuff like that. It's just like breathe through your nose, like inhale through your nose, slow exhale through your mouth, and you could watch that heart rate drop so fast that they'd be ready for the next shift. And the big thing that's going to help with like people in law enforcement is it calms your fight or flight system, so you're not in a constant stage of flight, so you can be able to handle your situations.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly it. And again, it wasn't something I learned in like therapy. I didn't learn it from clinicians. Just taking some yoga class once a week with this older lady who I thought was cute as a button, and she was so calming in her own demeanor. But she's the one who taught it to me, and that's something that I've used at work. I've used it at home. Sometimes just in the grocery store when people are annoying me, driving, a lot of driving, sitting driving. It works.
And yeah, that's awesome because being proactive on dealing with those stressors, you picked up another tool that you can give to other people. So it all kind of circles back.
Mm-hmm. And there's simple things too, like tapping therapy. I don't know if you're familiar with like autism. They need to touch or rub things, or some people play with their rings. Some people play with their watch. Like those are all calming mechanisms. I don't know if you knew that, but they really work.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't know there was that tapping. I've never heard of that before, but I mean that makes sense if that's some of the things of what with the autism spectrum.
Yeah. Did you ever see anybody spin their ring? You know how they spin their rings?
Yeah. Yep. And then
Like they're
again, especially
that's a calming mechanism, is what that is.
interesting.
Mm-hmm. Not for everyone, but a lot of people. or people who tap their feet on the floor.
Interesting.
You're taking that stress and putting it somewhere else. Little things. There are little things you can do day to day in a moment's notice. They teach that when you shoot too, right? Breathe when you shoot, to go through these breathing. So that's why they teach that to you.
Yeah, and it's in a world full of complicated, like where things can be kind of more complex than they need to be. Those simple tools that are very effective. I mean, that's. I mean, sometimes you just need to look at the simple things and try them out, and they might help you.
Yeah, you never know. Everything's worth trying, right?
Exactly. So, Julianne, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I got a couple more questions here, and especially because like one of my goals for doing this show is maybe trying to get people who don't know anything about law enforcement or maybe considering law enforcement as a career to try to get as much information as possible. Like in your case, your 24 years of experience, you've had some great insights and even your own personal experiences that you're going through. What's some advice that you would give to maybe somebody who's considering a career in law enforcement?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, just don't lose sight of the people who are around you. You know, keep those outer connections. Don't get sucked into just the police world. Keep your hobbies and whatever you're doing now, keep those in place. Just keep connected, keep grounded. Don't lose sight of the important thing, which is getting to the end of your career and being healthy and happy.
That's awesome. Next question. What's been the most, I mean, and maybe it's hard for you. I mean, there's probably a lot of these moments. But what's been the most rewarding aspect of your career so far?
Yeah. There are many rewarding things. I think helping any victim that you've ever helped, that's super rewarding. I think teaching crisis intervention has changed my life forever. It's made connections with people that I never knew were there. The friendships I've forged over the years have been amazing. I don't know what I'd do without those people. So there are a lot of rewarding factors. And just the fact that, you know, when we talk amongst ourselves, like the things that I've done, I don't really view as cool or that was great or it was just part of my job. But really, a lot of it was cool and it was great. And the best part about it is there's no sense of humor like Pop's dark sense of humor. So I feel like sometimes we have our own language. But a lot of that has been very rewarding for me.
Yeah, I can't imagine, especially, I mean, to do it with you say brotherhood, but sisterhood too, but like the family of all your colleagues, the camaraderie, and then the community. I mean, to know an impact that you made in the community, but the things that, the community made an impact on you as well. Have you had anybody maybe say like that you came across as a youth that are now an adult who has maybe said how much you may have had an impact on their life at all?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head, but there have been people that I've arrested that I ran into on the street, and they have thanked me for whatever reason that may be. I think because I wasn't very aggressive with them, I listened to them. I'm trying to think back. Gosh, there's been so many different positions I've been in. Truly, I think the part of it is really officers. So when I taught, it was several years ago. And a lot of times these officers come up now and will thank me for teaching them or just sharing my personal story, more or less, and how it impacted their career. So I think that has been a really full circle moment, so to speak. And including my son and what an impact he had because he was teaching alongside of me at that time, what an impact he made on their career. It's kind of mind-blowing.
Yeah, I can't even fathom. It's now. I mean, because you mentioned your son a couple. Are you able? Do you want to say what he deals with? Or
Sure, absolutely. It's public knowledge. I talk about it very openly. My son was diagnosed originally at the age of about 5 with ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and ODD, which is oppositional defiance disorder. I won't go into a very long story, but he was re-diagnosed around the age of 10 to 12 with bipolar 1 with rapid cycling, um, and ADHD. And now he's currently diagnosed with bipolar 1 and with psychotic features and IED, which is intermittent explosive disorder and ADHD. Bipolar 1 is more of the manic side. So to explain mania, it's like this one lady told me one time when I was doing an event, she said, I went out and I bought 3 patio sets for my condo. I said, oh, you did? She said, yeah. The irony is I don't have anywhere to put them because I don't have a patio. But that's what mania does to your brain. You're very impulsive, you're very high. Those are the very funny people, outgoing, gregarious. They'll hop on a plane and go anywhere, like spur of the moment people. Not that those characteristics define bipolar per se. There's a lot more that goes into it, but that's what bipolar 1 looks like. And then the other opposite side of it is obviously the depression. Now, my son has a depressive end, not where he lays in bed and doesn't want to get out and thinks about suicide, but he was always more the rager. I called him the Tasmanian devil. I don't know if you're old enough to remember that cartoon.
Yep.
Okay. So he spins and he kind of destroys everything in his path. That was my son. Like everything was up for grabs all the time. And it took him a long time. He was on medication for many, many years. And unfortunately, he's decided at the ripe age of 28 to no longer take it. So he's an adult, and those are his choices.
Yeah, and that's gonna. Is that hard on you with that decision? I mean, that's but like you just said, they're an adult. But I mean,
sure, of course it is. We can go in a whole different discussion in that path. But yeah, of course, I pray for my son every day. I'm not a super religious person, but I pray for his safety and his well-being. But at the end of the day, he's almost 30 years old. So I, as a parent, I can't really intervene because the way the mental health system is set up, it's not set up to help families who want to help their sick loved one. So it's a difficult spot to be in, I just try to remain positive. I always try to remain hopeful. And I pray that if he doesn't want to take medication and he leads a happy, successful life, no matter what looks like, I'm happy with that. If he, is sweeping floors somewhere and he's happy with that, I'm happy with that. If he becomes a rocket scientist tomorrow, I'm happy with that too. His happiness is my happiness.
Yeah, that's awesome. That positive outlook. I mean, it does so much wonders for everybody's lives just to look at things because you can't control every situation. So I mean, you have to do your best to stay positive.
Yeah, control is key word.
Yeah.
We want to control everything. As police officers, we want to control everything. I had to learn to really let that go. He has to find his own path.
Yeah, and and who knows what it'll lead to, but I mean, as long as, like you said, the big thing, as long as he's happy and stuff like that, that's essentially what life is about, like being able to live your life happily.
Yep. That's what it's all about.
Julie, the last thing I got is because anybody that's going through something or maybe wants to get a hold of you to talk to you more in depth about all this stuff we've covered, or I mean, just to maybe get a hold of potential resources, what's a good way to get a hold of you?
Sure. You can find me at behindourdoor@mail.com. That's our email. It's set up if you have questions or comments, or you're looking for a resource, or I can help someone, please email me. Well, Nancy is my partner, my podcast partner, and we'll do our best to guide you in that direction.
And do you have any last words or anything you want to say?
The only thing I'll say is that if you are choosing a law enforcement career or path, I say go for it. Go for it. That's what's in your heart. Go for it. It's probably one of the most rewarding jobs you'll ever find on this earth. I'm thankful that I did it. I'm thankful that a good accident happened. And one more year, I'll be more thankful when I'm sitting at home collecting country checks.
I can imagine. I mean, that's a pretty extensive and impressive career that you've gone through with the Chicago Police Department. Julie, I really want to thank you for your time and all the information. I mean, I've definitely learned a lot just talking to you or hearing your experiences and your story today. So I greatly appreciate the time.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I wish you and everyone else a safe and happy New Year.
Likewise, we'll keep in touch. I'll definitely listen to your show there.
Okay. Thanks, Jeremy.
Yeah, have a good one, Julie. Yep. Thank you for listening to On the Road, a law enforcement journey. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or would like to be on the show, email me at ontheroadlaw@gmail.com. And please like, share this podcast. Thank you.